little house in Grass Valley, we are able to get downtown or to other areas of Grass Valley for a nice restaurant, for shopping, for entertainment, the Center for the Arts, the Music in the Mountains, the movie theaters that are here, the theater in Nevada City. We need to try to do more about getting the Veterans Hall up and running for live performance, but that's a whole other issue. Those kinds of things with the people of this community who are so involved and so interested and so willing and caring about their community makes this a wonderful place to live. 10 minutes, you can be anywhere you want to be in Grass Valley. It's great. You can park in front of your house. It's even better. You're from an urban environment.
Depends on which neighborhood you live in.
My experience is parking, I don't have to park a block and a half away anymore. So for me, that's been a really great attribute. Primarily meeting the folks who are our neighbors, who we see downtown, who we see around town.
Thank you. Ms. Forsythe.
You'd be hard-pressed to not say the people here, because it's people that make a place. It's not government. It's not institutions. It's not business. It really, truly is the people. And we've been very fortunate in our community to have some great people move here and create some great venues and places and jobs and industry and just all sorts of things that have happened here. But I think the one thing that I really appreciate about Grass Valley is the balance that we've created in our community. We, as city council people, we sometimes spend a lot of time networking with our counterparts in other communities, and we have really just established in our community balance. We're not just a retirement community. We're not just a blue-collar community. We're not just a tourism town. We actually have done incredible things in this community to create balance through our high-tech industries, through the Center for the Arts, through having great downtowns, through having our business parks, having a state-of-the-art medical facility here, such as Sierra Nevada Memorial Hospital. So I'd say that the people that have come here have brought that balance with them, have given back to the community, and have just continued to make this a great place to live over the years.
Thank you. Ms. Arbuckle.
The benefit of living here, I chose, a lot of people here grew up here. Their families have lived there, in some cases 4 or 5 generations. And I chose to live here. Before I moved up here, I lived in Elk Grove, which is south of Sacramento. And when I moved to Elk Grove, it was very small, very quaint, and a bedroom community with a long commute to the nearest shopping area. However, Sacramento just kept growing and growing and growing, so I realized it was time for me to leave. So when I retired from the Sheriff's Department in Sacramento County, I looked for 2 years. I looked all over. I looked in Amador, I looked in El Dorado, I looked everywhere. But I kept coming back to Grass Valley. And I couldn't figure out why I came back to Grass Valley. But it was because of not only the people, because the people are the friendliest that I've ever seen anywhere, especially growing up in Southern California and moving into Sacramento, but the area's gorgeous. We have 4 seasons, except for this year. And the community spirit is amazing. Where else can you go to a community event, a school event, a public event, and see somebody in dreads having a very good conversation with a guy in a cowboy hat and cowboy boots? Only in Grass Valley.
Okay, thank you. Back to Mr. Emery. KVMR.
In this particular election cycle, in both state and federal and local elections, jobs seem to be the big issue, and government regulation or over-regulation seems to be one of the reasons that come back over and over with many groups about one of the reasons that job creation is difficult. And can you recommend two regulations that the city of Grass Valley currently has in place that could perhaps be tempered or cut back that maybe might help job creation?
I'm up.
You are Mr. Levine. Yes, you are number one.
Just two.
Okay, one thing I would love to have Grass Valley try and accommodate is a turnaround in permitting. Sorry, Tim, but, well, that was community development. So that we can have land that's in our general plan that's already designated, that we can turn these permits around in 3 days and get the plan check done, you know, this simple stuff that should really move faster. And I hear a lot that people are always waiting on their plan check. You know, the other thing is, I remember, this isn't exactly a regulation, but I remember growing up that we used to have infrastructure that we paid for, that we invited people to build on. We had bonds, and we had ready to build on land. And we had, you know, here it is, this is what we want. If you want to come here, let's go here and build that. And let's get that off the ground, get some, you know, if that's still available, and a way of processing and being proactive about getting the kind of development that we want. We put in part of it, and we go out and get the people that we want to put in there. Those are two things that would help us in the job ready-to-go market. Outside of that, you know, I think we hear a lot about regulations, but God, I read about what Texas is like, and I sure as hell don't want to be like Texas.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Firth.
Well, number one, I'm in favor of regulations, Paul. I think that they serve a purpose in a community. You know, I wouldn't want to see Lumberjack's restaurant with a 60-foot tall lumberjack standing in front of the restaurant waving to the passersby on the freeway. I think it makes sense to have realistic and reasonable regulations. You know, I agree with Howard in terms of, you know, a one-stop shop for building permits. You know, I don't think Grass Valley is as bad as some places, perhaps, but I think it's important for, you know, a person who wants to renovate their property, even in the historic district, to be able to make renovations for safety issues, for health issues, you know, without having to jump through too many hurdles. Right? It's important to look at that on a case-by-case basis, but I think it makes sense to help a property owner, you know, address issues of health and safety in their renovations. I don't think everything needs to be about development in Grass Valley. You know, I think sometimes it's good not to develop something, frankly. That sometimes there's too much development, and we really need to step back from that at times. But again, I think that regulations are there for a reason. You know, I want the food that I eat in the restaurant, I want it, you know, to be healthy and safe.
Okay. Thank you. Ms. Swarther.
I think that we should get rid of the tree removal permit process. Oh, wait, did we already do that? Yeah, I think we did. We like to give our city engineer a hard time because he's Mr. Regulation. You know, I think that the regulations are there. They serve a purpose. And one of the issues that people have oftentimes with regulations is that they don't make any sense. And sometimes it's very difficult to try and explain that to people when they come in for permits for things. You know, two areas where I think the city could improve on. One is the traffic fee mitigation program, because basically what that's done is it's made it not affordable for people oftentimes to do either remodeling or renovation of an existing commercial or home and add square footage, because the traffic fee is extremely expensive. And I give you a great example. One of my neighbors on Mill Street wanted to take some space he had on the second story, but because of the regulation that the city has, his parking, what he'd have to pay in a parking mitigation fee and the traffic mitigation fee was somewhere around $57,000. Well, that is cost prohibitive for somebody to add 2,000 square feet to their retail center. So, but that's sometimes the way that they're written, is they're not written to address the small little business, they're written to address much bigger issues. So if there was two that I think I would look at, one would be the tree removal process, because it's sometimes cumbersome for people because it's a safety issue, and the other is to really look at our traffic and parking mitigation fees and determine if they're serving the community to the best of their ability.
Art Buckle?
Okay, first, to address your issue, the two regulations. Number one, I think our permit process needs to be streamlined. We attended a joint city-county meeting last week, a couple weeks ago, where there was a presentation, and I really liked the idea that was presented. It was that when someone comes in requesting a permit for a development or whatever it is, all of the people that are involved in making that decision see it at one time, and they can make all their recommendations, changes, or whatever. Then everyone involved, meaning planning, engineering, fire, police department, everybody in the same room saying, okay, and looking at the plans. I think that's one way. They had a system where they said they did green light where it was good to go, yellow light, there needs to be some changes, and red, no way, go back and start all over again. And I think that that's one thing that we need to kind of really look at, because it would streamline and make everybody understand that when they come for a permit, they already know up front, instead of thinking that they're doing the right thing, coming back and saying, oh, no, now you got to do this. So that's one of the things. But one of the things that I'd like to say that we are doing well, and we've done it just recently, is our fee deferral program. What it does is we defer the fees up front until the project's completed. CORE is a perfect example. They would not have been able to start. Wolf Creek Co-Housing is another one that if we would have asked for all the fees up front, they wouldn't have been able to start with their business. So I think that's one thing that we are doing right. So we're working in the right direction.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Rowe, do you have any feelings on regulations?
I think everybody pretty much wiped that one out, but I think that if you notice that we don't have a lot of new businesses coming in to Grass Valley, maybe it's possible that it's too expensive to start a business, that if we streamline some of the things that we have, that it would be less costly, that we might attract more businesses that we would deem appropriate for our area to come in, with the cost being a lot lower than what it is today.
Thank you. And this is another one from the audience that is kind of interesting. Why do we not have collaboration with Nevada City and Nevada County to have one police force and one fire department? Mr. Firth.
Yeah, Jim.
I understand.
Good luck with that one.
I wanted to just give that a moment to sink in.
And our police officer is on the audience.
Grass Valley and Nevada City have a long history of friendship and sometimes not so friendly getting together about being the Nevada City as a city of more expense, a city of owners, I've heard. Grass Valley being more a city of workers, I've heard. And those issues have carried on to a certain extent, though I don't see it very often anymore. I think it is important for a community to be able to control, their government, and given the differences in attitude sometimes between Nevada City and the city of Grass Valley, I think it is important for those citizens to say, the police department is mine, the fire department is mine, I want to feel a sense of control. Fortunately, having said that, we have interagency cooperation in Grass Valley and Nevada City and the Sheriff's Department, between the fire departments, the Consolidated Fire Department, the Forest Service Fire Department, so that at Penn Valley, so that we are able to respond effectively at a moment's notice and help one another when it's necessary.
Thank you. And Ms. Swarthout?
Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, why do we not have collaboration with Nevada City and Nevada County to have one police force and one fire department?
I think it's twofold. One is that it's government's responsibility to provide the best possible service that they can to their citizens for a reasonable price. The city of Grass Valley has very capably done that over the years with fire and police, and we have collaborated in areas when it's been necessary. Our fire department enjoys a joint agreement with the Consolidated and with Nevada City. They have what they call mutual aid. It works very well. I'll tell you, a couple of years ago, there was a fire on Mill Street, and the first truck that showed up was Consolidated, the second was Nevada City, and then the Grass Valley ladder truck rolled up right behind them. And that's how it works in this community best. The other reason I would say, and this goes back a long ways, way before I ever lived here, way before I was born, and it's tradition. Our fire department is one of the oldest fire departments in the state of California. Every year, there's a past chief's dinner that is held, and it's probably one of the best events I've ever gotten to attend as a city council member. And when you listen to the stories and you listen to how these guys have worked together over the years, first as a volunteer fire department and then as a paid department, you realize that sometimes you just can't get rid of something that's been around for such a long time and is such an integral part of our community. So I think we do a great job at maintaining both fire and police services in Grass Valley, and I believe we collaborate when necessary, but to try and end either of those great institutions that we have in our city, I think would be a big mistake.
Okay. Sarbuckle?
The collaboration of police and/or fire is always an issue that comes up when the economy goes down, because people think that you can. I'm sorry, I can't hear. I'm sorry. People think that you can save a lot of money by joining forces. That's not necessarily the case. Each department, especially in Nevada, in all of Nevada County, because I will include Truckee because they always get left out, and everyone is unique. They're unique. They have different background investigations. They have different ways they train their officers, and to make them all one is really difficult. And it's difficult because the pay scales are not the same. So are you going to take a pay raise or a reduction in pay? The benefits are different. So I think we have the best. I think we have the best of both worlds right now, because we do have the joint operating agreement with Consolidated and Nevada City to provide our fire services. And like I said earlier, we are in the process of trying to see if we can collaborate to hire one chief for all the different separate departments staying separate with one chief in command. We just did the consolidation of dispatch, and hopefully that was the right move. All the chiefs of police and the sheriff all agreed that this is the way we needed to go, so hopefully it'll better serve us. But as far as consolidating, I just can't see, because we have unique traditions, we have the best officers, and we have the best customer care and customer service, and that unknown, you don't know if you'd have the same level. We have control of that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Trudeau?
I don't think that would be a good idea. It would be like mixing oil and water. They're over there, we're over here. Not that we would battle each other, but it would be. I don't think it would be feasible to do that. I like the way things are. I think it's pretty awesome, the services that we have and the people we have working for us. And as long as we can continue to do it financially, I don't see where we need to combine things. Why wreck something? If it's not broken, don't fix it, that kind of thing. I think would be wrong.
And Mr. Levine?
Well, I think we do collaborate. We don't have one department, but we do collaborate, and I think most of our great city council people say that, we have a lot of things that are working together, and I've seen Consolidated and how how they have collaborated in mutual aid, as Lisa talks about. The fire on Mill Street was very important, and actually bringing in even Auburn, because our ladder truck wasn't working, I don't think, and we brought a ladder truck in.
It was there.
What was the one where we brought in the ladder truck?
That's the other
That's
one,
okay.
never mind.
So, but we even have mutual aid that comes from outside of the community. So I think that is actually working pretty well.
Showed up. There's two.
But, you know, in the test tube right now, as a former school board member, we looked at the idea of unifying with districts, other elementary school districts, and it just didn't work out because of culture, because of funding, as Jan Arbuckle alluded to. And in the chemistry right now, you have Grass Valley and Nevada City school districts looking at some kind of collaboration or stronger consolidation. And, you know, it's a very incredible process with reincorporating the whole idea of what the culture of the department is, or the district is. So I think in watching those kinds of things and see if they move forward is really important to see where you want to go.
Thank you. We're just about at that time where I think we're going to go to our closing statements. And remember, now you have a minute and a half to do your closing statements. Now, we're going to be doing them in the reverse order, which means, Ms. Terrell, you start. And we'll work back to Mr. Levine.
I would like to see things go as they have been in a lot of ways, and there's some things I would really enjoy seeing changes happen. A lot of our youth can't wait to get out of high school so they can get the heck out of here. I would like to see maybe a satellite technical school come in and maybe help train them, or some of us, you know, towards we could do a quick class to maybe start a small business. Do something to keep the kids here. They're our next generation. I would like to see that happen.
That's it? Okay. Ms. Arbuckle, you have your closing statement.
Okay. First of all, I want to thank all the candidates for their views tonight. It's been really nice and helpful to hear the different views on the different topics and questions that we've had. So thank you very much. The media and the audience for your questions. Thank you. I think some of them. And the League of Women Voters, we want to thank you very much for giving us the opportunity and giving the public the opportunity to meet the candidates. So thank you very much. As your council member, I would like to continue to preserve the city services such as our police and fire, and strive through these. And we have to work towards these challenging times through cooperation and collaboration. It's been a theme tonight. It really has. Because together, if we all work together, we can make Grass Valley the best place to live, work, and raise a family. At this critical moment in Grass Valley's history, I offer the leadership, independence, and vision necessary for Grass Valley to achieve its greatest potential. This is why I'm running for re-election to the City Council, because my work's not finished, and there are great challenges ahead that require experienced and dedicated leadership. There's a saying amongst law enforcement that we are the chosen few who run to a fight, while most others flee to safety. I believe this also applies to elected officials. I would be honored to have your vote on November 2nd, and thank you all for hanging in there with us tonight.
Thank you. Ms. Forthat.
November 6th, I'm sorry. Thank you. She has to keep me straight sometimes.
Again, I want to take the opportunity to thank the League of Women Voters for offering up this forum, and I believe you have another forum coming up next week on the ballot issues, which I plan on attending because they are very complicated this year. I've been bombarded on TV with all the different choices that people had. We covered a lot of things this evening. Hopefully you got an idea of who's sitting up here, who's running for office, and who you want to vote for. I offer up over 17 years experience working for the city as a volunteer, both as a planning commission and also as a city council. I believe that there's still a lot of tough decisions left to be made in the city of Grass Valley. Although we are moving forward, we still have a lot of work left to do, and I think that at this critical time, it's important to bring experienced people in to make some of these decisions. I've lived here for a long time. I truly care about what happens in the community. My experience, I believe, has led me to making good decisions based on my living here and seeing what's going on and listening to people and being open-minded. And I really think that all those attributes are what makes a good city council person. So I respectfully also ask for your vote on November 6th and appreciate all the support that I've gotten from everybody so far. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. First.
Thank you again to the League of Women Voters and to all of you who've sat through this evening, and those of you at home. I've spent 30 years in private and public sector labor negotiations. My skill in finding a win-win solution for business and for employees required me to navigate some very difficult problems and find compromise solutions that all parties felt good about. We can do this in Grass Valley. These difficult economic times will improve, and I believe the key to our success as a city is open communication, open discussion, and an open mind. I'd like to invite you to my website, www.jimfirth4gvcouncil.com. I also have a Facebook page, same Jim Firth 4 GV Council. I have some brochures out in the lobby. I would ask you to pick one of those up if you don't already have one. Those addresses are all there. When I'm elected to the Grass Valley City Council, I'm going to be accessible. I'm going to hold town hall style meetings in the neighborhoods, for example, at the Veterans Hall for the South Auburn community, at the Love Building for the community over by Brighton. I'm going to be a full-time council member. That's going to be my position and how I'm going to serve you. I respectfully ask for your vote.
Thank you. Mr. Levine.
Thank you very much. I'm going to ask you for your vote. I am a longtime Grass Valley worker. I have a list of accomplishments because I work for the community and with members of the community. It has been a terrific pleasure to be involved and have the opportunity to be involved in this wonderful place that we live in. People know, I hope, the passion that I have for Grass Valley. I have to extend a great deal of thanks to the League, and I would also like to honor the current City Council because I think in the last 4 years they have served and done a terrific job under the circumstances that we have gone through. I want to thank you very much. I look to work with the City Council and be a leader as I have demonstrated over these years. It would be a great honor to serve this community. I am available. I have been at meetings and just so involved in this community. It has been a blessing to be here. I ask for your vote on November 6th, and I thank you all for your attendance and participation.
Thank you. On behalf of the League of Women Voters, I want to thank the candidates, first of all, for running, which is a major commitment in your life, and for coming here tonight. I also want to thank the audience and the media for their questions and the League members who helped us here tonight. And with that, good night.
Welcome
to the regular scheduled meeting of the Grass Valley City Council of, what's today? September 25th, 2012. If you have any phones, pagers, anything like that, if you could turn them off, because it doesn't interfere with our recording equipment. So first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Who out there can I get? Oh, there's a young man right there in a blue shirt. Could you lead the Pledge of Allegiance, please? I always pick on the young ones, I'm sorry.
Ready? Begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. Christie, roll call.
Councilmember Cookson.
Present.
Councilmember Foyer.
Here.
Vice Mayor Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Swarthout.
Yes.
Mayor Arbuckle.
Yes.
5 members present tonight.
Okay, thank you. Agenda approval? Oh, I'm sorry. Report out of closed session?
There was no reportable action taken, Madam Mayor,
Okay, agenda approval. Now I'm getting there.
and we have no changes from staff.
Okay. First item on the agenda then is public comment. This is for any items not on the agenda and within the jurisdiction and interest of the city. Please provide your name and address for the record, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes to give everybody the opportunity to speak. I'm going to make public comment first. I have that plugged in? Okay. Yeah, okay. One of the things I would like to say, the past week I've had a lot of phone calls and conversations with people regarding something that is troubling to our city and our downtown. And I just want to make sure that everybody understands, anybody who's out in the audience tonight and anybody who is listening, that we are going to address this, and that the issue is the homeless, the transient, some of the illegal drug activity, that type of thing, we'll be addressing. It will be on the October the 9th agenda, where we'll have a public forum to discuss these issues. The Chief Foster and Grass Valley PD will make a presentation at that time on how they hope to work their plan for trying to deal with these issues. So I just wanted to come out ahead and say, you know, anybody tonight, so that you had, a lot of people don't read what's on the agenda, so. Okay, now it's your turn. Howard?
And that's a very important thing, I know, so. Mayor, council, everybody. I have a couple things that I thought should be talked about tonight, and they may not have that import, but as most of us know, iconic personage of downtown passed away, and we celebrated her life last Friday. And in talking with our former rec commission, I would ask that the city name the October 21st game this year, the softball game, and every year after that, the Helen Williams Memorial Challenge. I talked to Jake, and I were at the memorial service together, and we came up with that. And we also, Jake came up with the name of Helen's Heroes for our team, and I think that would be very appropriate. It might help us improve our lineup as well. So
Get some more push there.
yeah, so I know that, you know, so that's something of great import to my heart and our heart of the community, and it would be a great way, I think, to recognize a fast pitch icon of Grass Valley. So, you know, anybody who goes into Williams Stationery can see that big yellow bat with the Main Street Canaries versus the Mill Street whatevers, and you know, the history of Grass Valley and baseball is kind of very closely entangled. So that would be one point. The other thing that I'm really pleased to report is that Governor Brown signed the ADA legislation, and California Downtown Association, which I'm on the board, was the lead agency in that legislation. And our our lobbyists worked very hard on that, Rexheim, to have that come about. And I don't know if you know about that legislation, but it really limits the drive-by lawsuit opportunities for people who want to make a quick $7,000 or whatever it is. So I think that's a great piece of legislation that got passed, and the California Downtown Association should deserve a lot of credit in that. I'm not sure if League was involved in that one or not, but I know we were. Okay. And then finally, on my way down, I'm inviting you to October 20th car wash for Hospitality House. If you would like to help wash cars for a couple hours. I was walking out to get in my car and got into a conversation and thought that would be a fun thing to do. So if you can put it on your calendar and come out, that would be a great thing. October 20th at the new Hospitality House. Thank you.
Thank you, Howard. Is there anybody else that would like to make public comment?
Good evening. Julie Jordan, Executive Director of the Grass Valley Downtown Association. I just wanted to announce, since you were talking about transients and trash and all of those types of things, I don't know if you noticed, but at 4 o'clock this morning, we started power washing the sidewalks. I am extremely excited. If you're a friend on Facebook, you can go to GV Downtown and see some of the before and after pictures, and it's looking very nice. Tomorrow they'll continue on Mill and on the opposite side of Mill, and then on to Bank Street. And then we had a crew come in and clean up both of the trash enclosures because I kind of had a meltdown. So we're getting back on track, and I think that in a matter of time we will be able to have it under control, and all the graffiti is gone out of the breezeway as well, and all of the buildings. If you see anything, let me know. But that's all I have for tonight. I just wanted to let you know that we're making progress.
Okay. Thank you, Julie.
Good afternoon, Mayor and council members. Steve Enos, resident of Grass Valley, and I used to sit in the seat that Dan's sitting in. First, the loss of Mrs. Williams, what a great icon she was, and what Howard talked about, what a great thing. Something else you might want to do, and President Barack Obama went ahead and mentioned Grass Valley today in his United Nations speech, because Ambassador Chris Stevens, the ambassador to Libya, that was killed along with 3 other members of the staff, was from Grass Valley. And I think it might be really nice. The Union newspaper did a big piece, but maybe go ahead and consider, if you would, putting a proclamation together of some type relative to him and all the fine work that he did. A very dedicated man that gave his life going ahead and working for us, and he's a Grass Valley native. I think that's pretty impressive. Thank you, Mayor, for going ahead and scheduling the next City Council meeting and an opportunity to go ahead and start talking about some of the issues that I've been trying to go ahead and raise attention to over the last couple of years. Emailing, meeting with the mayor on multiple occasions, giving the mayor a downtown tour. Today, the vice mayor and myself went ahead and walked around, and I'm sure that what Dan saw today blew his mind. One of the nice dumpsters that got cleaned up today, we found a homeless camp in there with 2 full camps set up, and maybe that could have been cleaned up earlier today, too. The police officers were informed, and hopefully they can go ahead and deal with those people tonight. I'm going to go ahead and shorten this up a little bit and say some of this stuff up for there, but Howard Levine, by watching him on the TV, I found a couple of times that, if you go to 4 minutes, you're probably okay here. A couple of things. One is, there was a recent letter in the newspaper of the Union that I agree with wholeheartedly and I find unbelievably disturbing. And I'll just read it quickly. Grass Valley used to be such a nice, relaxing town. I'm a younger mother, and the past few times I have tried to take my 11-month-old daughter to the park to play, I've had to either leave very shortly after arriving or bypass the park altogether. Why, you ask? This is because when I go to the parks these days, although there are druggies and hobos and people making it a totally uncomfortable and unsafe place to be. Last time I tried to take my daughter on August 10th, I took her to 4 different parks. At all of them, there were either a bunch of underage kids getting drunk or high, or adults getting drunk and high. I believe Grass Valley needs a better police force to enforce the law and to keep the parks nice and to clean comfortable for the public. It saddens me to say that Grass Valley has turned to such a sad excuse of a community. Not only GVPD, but the residents of Grass Valley need to step up and take this town back to the wonderful place it was. 5+ years ago, and I can't go ahead and agree with that, more importantly. And to that extent, over the last couple years, what I've been doing, and there was newspaper articles, one relative to the homeless camps not long ago, and the sheriff is here, as is the chief of police, and promises were made about closing the Bennett Street camps and other camps. They're the source of the majority of all the crime we have around our shopping centers, Railroad Avenue, and et cetera. Then the Union newspaper did a series called Battle in the Basin. Photographs. We've had people one guy got killed while running after stealing some liquor and got hit. And this was a very in-depth study. And then they went ahead and did the piece on complaints of vagrancy, regular fare in downtown. And the last piece that was just done was burglaries and the explosion in our crime rate, which is just not houses, but it's also the businesses, and it's also the shoppers in the shopping centers, and it's out of control. If you go right across from the El Dorado Tower...
Just wrap it up, please.
Yes, I understand.
Thank you.
You'll find a bunch of these. These are security caps off of booze bottles from Safeway that reside in the transient flop camp right at the base of the Del Oro mural behind the building there. This is my favorite sign from under the freeway where you get onto Grass Valley, where I clean it up every 2 weeks of needles and empty bottles. One side says socks, I need money for socks. The other side says traveling, anything is a blessing, 420, or spare a nug, which the police officers will tell you is slang for marijuana also. It goes on and on and on and on. The rest of it I'll go ahead and provide at the next meeting. But needless to say, I and others have never seen downtown Grass Valley or our parks or our shopping centers, and especially Safeway Shopping Center, as dirty, filthy as it is, just physically dirty and filthy. And then in the police blotter was the girl that was reported for going ahead and prostituting herself for drugs the other night at the Safeway parking lot. This stuff happens constantly. And Dan Miller saw some of that today.
Okay.
So I'll be back at the next meeting, but the time has come.
All right, thank you, Steve. Is there anybody else that would like to make public comment at this time? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back to the agenda. Next item on the agenda is consent items. All matters listed under the consent calendar are to be considered routine by the City Council and will be enacted by one motion in the form listed. There will be no separate discussion of these items unless before the City Council votes on the motion to adopt. Members of the Council, staff, or the public request specific items to be removed from the consent calendar for separate discussion and action. And I believe Lisa and Jason have to recuse themselves on item number 5.
Yes.
Is that correct? Okay. So, is there any changes or?
Nothing from staff, Madam Mayor.
Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, Chrissy, roll call.
Councilmember Cookson?
Yes.
Councilmember Foyer?
Yes, except for item 5.
Vice Mayor Miller?
Yes.
Councilmember Swarthout?
Yes, except for item number 5.
Mayor Arbuckle?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, next item on the agenda. I know people who have been here on a regular basis realize that we usually do public hearing before administrative, but we're switching it up a little bit tonight. So we're going to do the administrative. Item number 10, request by Nevada County Grown to review can consider a similar ordinance to County Ordinance 2325 related to locally and regionally grown agricultural items.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Tom Lass, Community Development Director. So on March 13th of this year, your council considered a request from Nevada County Grown to possibly adopt an ordinance similar to the one the county adopted in 2010. That ordinance basically sets, it's a notice procedure for all stores that advertise agricultural products as locally or regionally grown. So at the March meeting, the council did express some concerns with the enforcement provisions of that. So and they directed staff to meet with the agricultural commissioners and others to try to get some feedback on that and bring that back to you. So just recently, staff met with Jeff Powellman, the agricultural commissioner, who's here in the audience, and also Howard Levine, representing the Nevada County Grown Organization. and we discussed some of the enforcement procedures and how that works. So basically what that ordinance does, all it does is it requires any store that advertises a product, agricultural product is locally or regionally grown, it requires an additional notification placard or display that states that if a customer is interested in knowing where that product was grown, they need to contact a store employee to find out, so that then that store employee is supposed to know where that product was grown. Then the customer, on their own choice, can make a decision whether that meets their own personal definition of local or regionally grown, and they can make a decision whether or not to buy that product. So that's really what the notice says. It's just a informational item, and it allows customers to make their own decision on the purchase of that. So as it pertains to the enforcement, right now how it works with the county is that Jeff Pileman does note that that the county, or that the Agricultural Commissioner's Office can work this into their regular routine inspections when they look at the weights and measures and the other inspections they're required to do for stores that sell food. And they would look for that notice to see if it's there. However, when it comes to enforcement, it's actually the county, the responsibility is left to other county staff, the county enforcement officers, and they would be responsible for any noncompliance with this, with the county ordinance. So if the city were to pursue a similar ordinance, then city staff would be responsible for ultimately making sure that placard was in place where stores were advertising for locally grown. We would work with the Agricultural Commissioner's Office and to the extent we could also on that. Staff is recommending that if the council is interested in adopting an ordinance, that we first maybe contact the grocery stores around here to get some input from them to find out whether or not, just get their input to see what issues they may see with the city implementing such an ordinance. Again, as noted in this last staff report, it would be an enforcement issue that staff would have to deal with, and we did express a little bit of concern with that last time. That's really the only provision we had. So with that, that concludes my presentation. Again, Jeff and Howard are here if you have specific questions of them, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
I just have one real quick one, if I can go first. I know I usually don't go first, but I just have one real quick question. This is going to be a voluntary compliance, or is it going to be a mandatory compliance for the businesses?
Well, the way the county ordinance is written, it's mandatory.
It's
so
mandatory.
If the city could, again, if you have an ordinance that's advisory, that's all it is. So
right.
We would not have to enforce anything. We would just
okay.
inform stores that we would like them to do that.
I just want to make clear that, to the people out there that this would be, if we do go forward, it would be mandatory of the businesses to comply with this. And I'm starting to see a lot of other stores, especially grocery stores, really kind of indicating where locally grown products are. I'm seeing a lot of signage.
Some do it on their own.
I think the consumers are kind of starting to demand it.
Exactly, and I'm seeing it sometimes. Some of the stores here, I know Rayleigh's, when they have something that's locally grown, they put that in there, and SPD is really good about
Briar Patch.
And Briar Patch, and so I know they're voluntarily doing that now. So I just wanted to make it clear that it would be.
Okay.
Does anybody else have any questions of Tom or Howard or Jeff?
Rich.
Or Rich, I'm sorry. Otherwise, I'm going to open it for public comment. Okay. Anybody that would like to speak to this issue, please come to this podium at this time and give your name and address for the record. Please limit, as usual, please limit your comments to 3 minutes so everybody has an opportunity to speak. Would anybody like to make public comment on this?
I would. Besides me, you mean? Want them all to line up?
Somebody besides you, Howard. No, you
Rich Johansson's here, who's also on the board, and Jeff, if he wants to comment. But to me, the important thing is getting people the right information. And local isn't really a term that has any definition. So when people see the sign local, in some stores, they're getting the message to put where that local means. It could be avocados from the Imperial Valley or wherever they come from. And believe me, I'm not a farmer. This is not what I do. I don't grow products. But we do have farmers who live in Nevada County. And when things say local or regional, especially local, it's important that our farmers, the people who are buying the produce, know that local might mean to that store down in Chula Vista or somewhere like that. And having a simple sign that advises the public when they're shopping that you have the right to ask people where local is and that the store will be happy to give that information is an important factor in people making that determination. So it's only really, I see, is asking the stores to put up that signage so that people will not be intimidated and they know that that information is readily available. And then the implementation of, the county has really not had any questions that I know of to great magnitude as far as enforcement.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right.
I got a, Howard,
Yeah,
I'm not a farmer either.
I know.
So
Well, I've heard, yeah.
we
That
know,
you've
we know we've got
grown
apples
stuff.
and peaches and things like that, but how large is the agricultural community here in Nevada County?
It is.
And does local mean Nevada County, or does local mean?
Local doesn't mean anything. Local is what the advertisers are using as a sign to let the people know their product is fresh. What local means to the buyer is different than what the seller might mean by local. And so it's available for the purchaser to ask, to have the permission from that store to say, ask us if you want to know what local really means to us when we buy our produce. There is no real definition of local. And with that understanding that there is really no definition of local, local can be used to market as if it's being grown by our local people.
Right.
So we just want the ability to say, if there's a local product that we're marketing and people might think it's being built or grown here, then they can have a conversation with the grocery store, especially if they're using local to advertise that.
Okay.
I'm going to go away.
Okay.
I didn't
Thank
mean
you.
to get a question.
He understands pen language.
Mayor, Councilman, Rich Johansson, farmer. I'm also on the board of Nevada County Grown. We have approximately 80 farmers, growers, producers, members in Nevada County Grown, and it's growing every year. I strongly urge you to adopt an ordinance that is mandatory. As Howard said, locally grown has no legal definition, but having seen it on produce now for 4 years since we initiated the county ordinance, local means to some Nevada County grown, others 20 miles, others 100 miles, others California. I've seen it on produce from Florida and Arizona and Mexico. It is the buzzword, it is the material phrase used to sell produce today above any other. And a reasonable person going into a grocery store would not know what it meant to see local anymore because it's being used in many different ways as a marketing tool. So those are the two precepts of the Federal Trade Commission's Truth in Advertising, and this is what this law is based on. We don't care to put a definition on local. We can't do it. There's too many crops. But if someone does use it, they should know where it comes from. I've even asked people who have locally grown stuff where it came from. They had no clue. And under the new, is it going to be a burden on the grocery stores? No. There has to be, under the new food safety laws, total traceability of that tomato or that fruit, where it came from. They should know. So strongly urge you to pass it. It lines up really well with the FTC's Truth in Advertising section, and that's my hand right here. So you have great support, and County Council really looked at this upside down and grilled us at the Ag Advisory Commission before they signed on and the county adopted it. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Does anybody else would like to speak to this issue? Seeing none, close public comment, bring it back to council for further discussion and/or a motion.
Can I ask Jeff a couple questions that were,
Jeff, can you come up?
sorry to put you on the spot.
He was
You're
trying to hide.
probably the only person who can answer this. So the county put this in effect 4 years ago or a couple of years ago? In the ordinance?
Mayor, council members, Jeff Plowman, Ag Commissioner. Yes, as Tom reminded me, it's 2010.
Okay, so 2 years ago. And what's been your experience dealing with this at the county? I mean, have the grocery stores objected, have they objected to it? Have you had citizens who reported inaccuracies in labeling or had any issues?
No, we've had 0 complaints from citizens. And also, as a county, we had a meeting with grocery stores as well ahead of the ordinance being considered by the board. And the grocery stores themselves did not have an overall objection to it. Many of the stores that we were actually meeting with, coincidentally, were from the Grass Valley area. So there was, and then also, as was stated earlier, there was some observations themselves before coming to the meeting that they themselves saw advertisements that as labeled as local, and the distance varied quite a bit in their own stores. But no, really there hasn't been an overall objection either from the customers or from the stores during the process and afterwards.
Thank you.
When we define grocery stores, what are we talking about? I mean, is there a size? I mean, we have a lot of smaller stores that sell fruits and vegetables too.
Right. So these are stores, food stores that have produce departments, and regardless of size. But also, in the Nevada County ordinance, it applies to farmers markets and also the mobile produce vendors.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Are there any other questions or discussion? Okay, and what staff needs is just direction.
If we
We're
want
going to do, if we want to pursue it or not.
And we can pursue it go out and we can do the meetings with the grocery stores, or if it's something you want to see in the ordinance form coming back, is during that both processes together, we can do them in tandem or separately, if you have a desire to see it come back.
I mean, I think that it's another tool for people to find out what they're buying and the food that they eat and that they're feeding their families. I know that there's a ballot initiative on the state ballot, I think it's 37, that talks about food labeling. I think we're going to continue to see more and more of it. I know there's one particular grocery store in the community who advertises local, and they do quantify it, saying it comes from with 100 miles of where their stores are. But they have stores all over, so it doesn't necessarily mean 100 miles of Grass Valley or Sacramento. So, but I think if we can try and work with the grocery stores and our farmers markets. This is a no-brainer for them because they drive up here from wherever they are, so they already basically have that information. I just think it's helpful for people to know where their food comes from.
And I agree with that. And I think that I like it when I go into a store, no matter where it is, and it's not only just says locally grown, but it says locally grown in Nevada City or in Chicago Park or Colfax or somewhere else. At least it gives you a sense of where that food is coming from. Even if, like Howard says, there's no true definition of what does local mean. And I mean, to me, local is within about 100-mile radius, and that may be stretching it a bit, but something from the Imperial Valley certainly doesn't seem local to me. So I think that I like this idea a lot. I mean, I'm not a real fan of more government involved with telling business how to do their business, but I think that people want to know this. So it's not about the regulation. I think it's about giving the information to the people that they want to have available to them to make good choices. So.
And it doesn't necessarily cost the grocery stores anything to do this. It's basically just providing the information to their customers, which
they already have.
Yeah, they already have. So I would make a motion that we would direct staff to put together an ordinance, work with our local markets, maybe get a list from the county of who if they had Grass Valley stores that were involved with it, and bring something back to us whenever it's logistically possible for you to do that. You have a lot on your plate right now.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, Christie, roll call.
Councilmember Cookson?
Okay.
Councilmember Foyer?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Miller?
Okay.
Councilmember Swarthout?
Yes.
Mayor Arbuckle?
Yes.
Motion carries 5-0.
Okay. Thank you.
It's one of those things, though.
I know, it is one of those things.
Okay, next item on the agenda, parking management plan. Dan and Lisa need to recuse themselves from this.
Lisa's always ready to go.
I know.
I know. And I just want to make it clear that in order for this item to pass or fail, it requires all three of us agreeing.
No pressure.
Okay, just, no pressure. I'm just, want to make it clear to the people out in the audience that that is just the way it is.
Yes. Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll lead off. The items coming back to you, from about 6 months ago, we had the initial presentation walking through the curb system, and we went through a process to get to there, looking at a parking management plan for downtown Grass Valley. You had a presentation from Representative Curb, and they're actually here this evening. Carol Dotson and Kane Dudd are in the audience, and be glad to answer any questions related to the system itself. We did not ask them to redo the presentation. You've seen the report before, so I didn't see a need to rehash through the system. The staff report kind of highlights, I think, some of the capabilities of the system as well. At the time we walked through it, one of the questions came back was dealing with the financial element, and can we actually do it from a financial perspective. So that was the primary focus of the report that was prepared for the council. The system looks at how do we manage our 458 public parking spaces kind of in the downtown area. That is split between on-street, off-street parking. It's split between some that is restricted. Most of it's 3-hour time restricted. Some of it is permit restricted. Some have other limits for parking, loading, handicap, other elements that go into parking management of the downtown. A couple different studies have been done on the parking and elements that come into play on it. Bottom line was, can we handle our parking system? Two different things have come out. One is ultimately, does the town need more parking, which very expensive. Most of that looked at how do you do a parking structure or something of that nature. The goal is to end up with the parking you have. If you can run it where you can maintain about an 85% maximum occupancy, that tends to create a feeling of open parking so people don't get frustrated and leave from not being able to find parking. Our parking capacity runs between kind of the low end in the 60s to up to practically 100%, like on Mill Street. I think it was 98.6% in one of the studies. The parking lots tend to run a little lower than that, mainly I think because of the permit parking lots that don't always fill up, but they're not available for other people. But that'll run 60 to 85% in our public parking lots on the various studies that have been done. So one of the questions that came up of what drives that capability, really you're looking at, how available is parking, and then what becomes the restrictions. Is it price sensitive? Is it time sensitive? And how much flexibility do people have? Generally, you're looking at restrictions that fall during the core of the week, Monday through Saturday, or all 7 days, 9 to 6 for key shopping time. And then looking at, as we currently do, most of our parking has a 3-hour limit on it. If you exceed the 3 hours, you can be ticketed. The enforcement element right now is basically, Captain Mark to speak to it, but pretty much volunteer-driven. We do have some officers that do a minimal amount. But it's a staff intensive. You go out, you mark tires, and you go back out and see if people have moved or not. And if they've exceeded the 3-hour time limit, they can receive a ticket. The other element, we do have permits that we sell in that element. There's been a drop-off in the usage of parking permits and selling that. I think it's one price sensitive again there, and also I think people are looking for alternatives. Either they're parking in the neighborhoods or elsewhere, or taking the risk of a ticket that comes there. As we looked at the curb system, it really brought back in the element of helping to manage that through a pay-for-parking program. I think that's really the policy question for the council is, do you want a paid parking system? If the answer to that's yes, then the question becomes, I think, what's the flexibility that type of system brings to the city? Does it open up parking? Does it encourage people to manage how they park and use parking differently? If it's more expensive, do you tend to have less use of that other than folks who really want it? The program here would actually go from that core of the T in Maine, about 70 spaces, is a higher premium parking. You go out a little further, it's less, you still pay, then you go a little further out from that, and then that's back to a time-limited parking. So there is still be parking available that's free, but still limited at 3-hour time limit. So there's flexibility in terms of how do you do that. Originally, the city was looking at this, and it was being looked at as part of the city's redevelopment agency work as a potential way of managing parking. Obviously, that's gone away with the state action of eliminating redevelopment. In working back through other options for financing the system, should that be the direction, 3 different levels were looked at. One is a traditional lease, but you don't own it, and it's just an ongoing lease of the system. You can get out of it at certain points in time. You can do a lease purchase, where you end up paying a lease into the system, you own it. Each of those dollars goes out ultimately to the private side, private market, if you will. The other, and I guess the more creative element, was looking at doing an internal financing to the city. It'd be very similar to us buying a CD and ultimately getting paid back interest and getting the principal back. In this case, it both come back to us in a traditional financing, but internal financing. And the question that's come up already to me on that is, well, if you have those dollars, can you go use them for something else? Basically, the answer to that is no. You're taking dollars that we would rather be otherwise have invested in local agency investment fund, or we would have it in a CD. So you're taking the county's portfolio dollars and saying, can we invest them in a system that pays back the city, and frankly, at this point, a somewhat higher interest rate than what we're earning on any of our market items, but about the interest rate that it would cost us if we were to go borrow money in the market. So it's not usury, if you will, in the interest rate. And then ultimately, the hard dollars that go out for it come back to the city as well. And again, very similar, if you have a 3-year CD, at the end of the 3 years, you get all the dollars back plus interest. Similar concept, if you will, in the marketing plan, the financing plan. Of course, it does have the risk. If it doesn't work, if nobody uses it, you run into that risk element. But I think it makes sense from a financial perspective. It's a fairly prudent way in terms of financing the system, should that be desired to go forward. It does allow us to generate interest back to the city. Ultimately, it generates, the cash flow back for the cost of the system, and it allows ongoing current and future dollars to be reinvested into the community. That element comes back into investing in maintaining the system and maintaining the downtown area, and ideally, we would leverage those dollars to enhance what happens in our downtown. One of the recommendations, if it goes forward, to look at those in terms of it becoming a funding for some of the tourism work and the promotional work that would leverage against what the counties do and others are doing, so it becomes a funding mechanism for other elements. But again, it comes back to, I think, the basic policy question in terms of, does this become an effective way to manage parking, trying to get that freed up parking? You want to see turnover parking, especially in the high demand area. How do you get customers get in, get out, do your business, leave your dollars and come back later and leave more? But the other element on this is nice is, at this point, you don't have the restriction of 3 hours. If you want to come to the movies, go to dinner, go shopping, you're not worried about a 3-hour limit. You can buy 6 hours or whatever the whole day is if you wish, and spend the time in Grass Valley. We do have those complaints now and again where people are here enjoying the town, they exceed the 3 hours, and thank you for the stay, the shopping, and the ticket comes into play. The other side is, from the merchant standpoint, I think their desire to see the turnover available parking, but I think there's a general concern about paid parking. Will that actually become an inconvenience to people? Will it reduce the number of people coming downtown? And you've got one letter I know from a lady, and I spoke to her on the phone today, expressing that concern. Does that keep people from coming into town? And you're looking at a kiosk system that I'll say is more complex than a standard parking meter, and so the concern there is, do people know how to utilize it? It's a valid concern, I think, and that one I think you get over with, but it is a concern that's there. It's not new technology in terms of a kiosk. They're utilized throughout our region and beyond in terms of a parking management system for paying for parking. I think the system brings a lot of capability to it, and I won't go into all the detail. I think you have a lot of, I'll call it bells and whistles, but really it's added value to a parking system. It's not just the parking meter. There's other elements that come to it, and that's kind of outlined in the staff report. Representatives from CURB can definitely speak to more of those details as well. So I guess the question comes back at this point. We've looked at it. There's been several studies looking at we need to do something on parking ultimately. The current economy, our parking probably isn't as bad as or tight as it was a few years back. Hopefully we're successful with other elements, and our parking will again be a problem for us. Small towns with parking problems, generally good. That means you have a lot of people down and doing things. But again, how do you manage that? And ultimately, this does create a resource back to the city financially, which council knows as well as staff does, and some of the challenge we have financially right now and the things we're looking at. This becomes a way to help address at least a portion of that issue going forward as well. So with that, let me open up. I can answer any questions with the staff report. If you have questions, again, technical side, I'll defer to the CURB representative to speak to the detail levels of that. But in terms of some of the financial structure, in terms of basic other issues that have come up in the parking realm, I'd be glad to address those.
All right, thank you, Dan. Does anybody have any questions of Dan before I open it up to the public?
No questions.
No questions? Okay, if anybody would like to, I'd like to open public comment. If anybody would like to speak to this issue, please come to the podium at this time to give your name and address for the record, and limit your comments to 3 minutes so everyone has the equal opportunity to speak. Chauncey, welcome.
Good evening, Chauncey Posen, 415 Main Street. How are you guys?
Good.
All right. I'm a little concerned about this for a number of reasons. Primarily, was a study done or any consideration about the neighborhoods that are in the downtown core and what kind of a hit they're going to take with this? And I'm really talking about the work week. We already have issues with folks that are working downtown that are parking in the neighborhoods, and you all know we're very parking challenged, and this is just going to exacerbate that. I understand the want and maybe the need to garner funds from tourists, but I'm really concerned on a day-to-day operation of Grass Valley whether this community is going to embrace this or not. You know, we're an older population. I have a stupid phone, not a smartphone. I can make a call and I can get a call, but that's all it does. So I am a little concerned that the older folks here are going to get turned off about coming into Grass Valley, particularly if it's just to come in and for 10 or 15 minutes and pick something up at a store. They might be intimidated that, oh, they got to walk all the way down this street and go to a kiosk and play the numbers game and give them a credit card and da-da-da-da-da. But I'm mostly concerned about what's going to happen in the neighborhoods, and I would like to hear a representative address that they did consider that. Thank you.
Thank you, Chauncey.
Madam Mayor, council members, my name is Ed Thomas, 692 Morgan Ranch Drive. I kind of don't know where to start on this, but first of all, I think that part of Mr. Holler's description is erroneous. If I have $100,000 and can go buy a car for $100,000 and not pay for it, have 8% interest, that's going to cost me $8,000 a year in interest, plus some principal payment. If I take my money and pay for that car, I now have a car, but I don't have income of $8,000 because I did that. And in the example in here, that's the way that's been categorized. Just another aside, there's a lot of talk about smartphones being used in here, and I just wanted to remind the city council that it's against the law to use your phone when you're driving, so that doesn't sound like a very good idea to me. And thirdly, and most importantly, I I really think that you should delay authorizing this project and committing the $400,000 to it until we see if we can get Measure N passed. Measure N, as you know, is, if it passes, will provide over $2 million in revenue that you have said would be used for the police department, fire department, and for street improvements. If Measure N does not pass, I'm just thinking that the $400,000 might better be used for our public safety and improving our streets. So I just urge you not to commit to this $400,000 until we see what happens on Measure N. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve?
Hello, again, Steve Ennis, resident of Grass Valley. I actually live up Neal Street, South School, and one of the nearby neighborhoods. I think what we're actually here is we've got a solution looking for a problem. We don't have a parking problem in downtown. We've got tons of parking downtown. Look at the studies, look at the spaces devoted to parking and asphalt, and use Google Earth. We have more parking in our downtown core area, both public and private, than most, well above average. And as a land use planner, I've worked on these kind of things. A couple things I'd like you to go ahead and consider when doing this is this is going to be a big cultural shift for the community, too. I think it's going to drive customers away. Jason, remember the downtown iPhone app? Remember you saying when the hearings were on that, going, man, you know, we do these things and we do some of this stuff and we do all these programs and we spend a bunch of money and then we don't follow through or they don't work or the next thing you know, we're on to something else, like redesigning websites constantly. Before you spend another nickel of taxpayers' money on something like this or put that money towards something like that, look at what your necessities are versus your luxuries. And your luxuries are things like, as far as I'm concerned, traveling to conferences, paying for and funding a downtown parking plan. The necessities are the things that you cut the only drug enforcement officer we have in the city of Grass Valley, and drugs are our #1 issue and they're rampant. If you want to see a lot of it, you can go watch 20 or 30 drug deals by noon at the Safeway parking lot in downtown, because I've been monitoring that, photographing that, documenting that, and emailing that to people in here. I'd rather go ahead and see money go to reestablishing that officer, the drug enforcement officer, versus spending one nickel towards this. And the issue of our neighborhoods, the best customers that downtown merchants have is me and the Postons and the others that live 2 and 3 and 4 streets away. We walk to downtown and we shop and we spend money every single day, except I don't spend so much anymore over the last year because of what's happened to downtown and how far it's degraded. But what I do get in my neighborhood that's got parking on one side of the street and multifamily housing units all over the place is the employees and the owners of the businesses that park up there then walk down. Or they shuffle their cars around the parking lots. On South Auburn Street, the city bought a big chunk of property next to the hotel. It's a gravel parking lot. It's flat and gravel. The gates on it, I've asked for years that it be opened up and provided to employees at a very deep discounted rate. There's very little employees and business owners buying the employee parking permits anymore. They should step up. This is like a convenience thing for them. So the question becomes, is this a solution looking for a problem? And is this a proper use of our money? And is the culture shift worth it? And I say at this time, no. And before you spend another nickel, get us a drug enforcement officer and find out where all that app money went and what got done with that. Because that all vanished into air, that whole program, it looks like. So think about it, please.
Thank you. Is there anybody else like to speak to this issue?
Hi, my name's Scott Ingram. I'm from the Glenwood area, 525 Glenwood Road. I get over here to Grass Valley every so often, and I definitely look for those places called free parking. I don't know what you guys exactly are coming up with as far as getting a lot of money that's going to cost even more money to enforce, but I think that's just the gist of what I heard. It's going to cost a lot of money to enforce something that we're not, sounds like we already have parking here. Doesn't seem to me like should spend a lot of money to enforce something we already have. I'm all for free parking if I think that's going to bring more people into the downtown. More people can sit there and enjoy the town, go into the galleries and the various other tourist things, someplace to enjoy their special private time. Not everybody is working, but those that are working, everybody that I know of is having trouble trying to find parking for all day. Most people don't just work for 3 hours, and not everybody who wants an employee wants to pay their parking. I don't know. Anyways, that's just the way I look at it. I haven't seen any horse parking for a long time. But Grass Valley has horses and buggies on the seal here. Most of them don't have pay parking there for your buck wagon. And anyways, talk to you later.
Thank you. Is there anybody else that would like to speak to this issue? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back to council for further discussion and or a motion.
Dan, there's a couple of questions of the curb folks, if you want them to address that.
Okay,
Carol Dodson.
Carol, want to come up and answer those questions?
Good evening, Mayor and Council. For the record, Carol Dodson here on behalf of Curb Systems. I also have Kane Dutt, who is one of the founders and owners of Curb Systems. And I'll address a few of the questions that were brought up. I think I'll start with probably the need. As you know, when we came to do the parking study, or to update your parking study, it was originally done in 2008. By another firm that you had come in and look at your occupancy levels, and I believe that was TKJM, and that was done back in 2008. And then when we were asked to come in, you wanted us to update that occupancy, again, to really look at how much your parking was being utilized in the downtown. And I think, as Mr. Haller indicated in the staff report, and we presented in our last presentation in April, you do have a very high occupancy, over 85% and even up to 100% in some areas, which is a great problem to have. That means your downtown is vibrant and people are coming and visiting it. And so that's a very, very good thing to be dealing with. So that's really what brought this forward, is there was not only a perceived issue, but the numbers were really there from the counts that we had done. The other question about the neighborhoods, if you look back in the report, there was a number of alternatives that we put together to address what we call the toothpaste effect of parking seeping into the neighborhoods. We see this in a lot of areas. And normally, we either deal with a flex parking program, or we initiate a permit type of use, so that people can't park up there that aren't part of those residential areas. And that really eliminates people not having the ability to park in their residential areas. Again, we want to really have people look at parking in the appropriate areas. If they want to park in more reasonable areas, they can go to some of the identified lots, and if they want to pay premium, then they can park right downtown, based on the price system that we've put together. The issue with the smartphones, I will be very honest with this. I just got a smartphone about 3 months ago. So I am really just learning how to utilize that. And I figured if I could run a gas pump and plug my card in and do the numbers and give them my zip code, I could probably use my smartphone. And it really hasn't been that bad. It's been very helpful, and I've utilized it in cases like that, and it's really been good. But I also had a real basic phone before, and that worked fine as well. If you have a smartphone, there's a lot of bells and whistles on something like this that can help those types of visiting people, but you don't have to have it. You can actually go in and you can put the coins right in these systems, and I do that frequently. So it's very full spectrum for folks to use in that respect. And I think that that when we look at the enforcement issue, which was the final question that came up, was there was a concern about how difficult enforcement would be. What we find with this sensor system that we use here, which is cameras, it makes it very much easier for the enforcement officers, because the cameras actually download to them when a car is parked or a vehicle is parked for over the extended amount of time and there's a violation. So then the officers can more fully utilize their time to go out and ticket just those areas and not look for the white checks and have to keep track of it. They have little devices that tell them that. And with the sensor camera system, there's never any dispute that, is it the right car? It's right there on the video. So we're really hoping that will make the enforcement a whole lot easier. So I think I got all the questions that were mentioned. I think the only other one was a budget question that you may want to respond to, Dan. Is there anything you wanted to add, Kane? Okay. I'm available for any other questions.
Thank you very much, Karen.
Thank you.
I know one of the questions that was brought up is about the restricted funds, and I know you mentioned that these funds could only be utilized for those purposes. So could you address that, Dan?
Yeah. Again, the funding sources, right now, if you look at, in fact, you have an agenda item, the consent calendar, you look at the city's portfolio is a mix of general fund, restricted funds, just a variety of things that we have in all different funds with restrictions on it. These funds we don't have $400,000 sitting there, let's go hire a police officer with. You don't have that revenue sitting there. If you did, you'd do them for a year. Next year, you'd lay the person off because there'd be no revenue to support them. You'd be spending your general reserves down to do that. The concept here was you take that and let's say you have about a $10 million portfolio of everything that comes through the city over time. And we take a lot of those dollars and we'll turn around and we'll purchase a CD, or we have a lot of it in fairly liquid assets in the local agency investment fund, and it earns about 0.5% interest right now or so, so it's not a high interest earnings. So as you're taking those same dollars, and I think the best analogy to come up with is it's very similar to purchasing the CD. I mean, here you are buying a hard asset. You're taking those dollars and investing it into infrastructure, but it's infrastructure that has a revenue stream, so you're paying yourself back. So you set up a formal debt structure, and so you're going to pay yourself back both principal and interest. The proposal here would be to do it within a 5-year period of time. So you do get your dollars back, and within that portfolio, you're not taking dollars specifically maybe out of X fund, but it's in the portfolio fund, so it's no different than when we invest in LAIF, when we come back and we allocate interest across funds based on the dollars that were there that month. So same thing here, as interest comes back to the city, unless you dedicate funds from a particular place you take it, that interest comes back in, it actually increases the overall interest allocation of the city's portfolio. It's not that the funds are there and available for expenditures where you may have other priorities for. It really is an investment strategy of how you're coming back into this. I mean, if this was a couple $1 million, we wouldn't be recommending that because it ties a lot of your cash up. At this level, we believe it's a prudent way to do it. It generates cash flow, and it's a way of paying yourself back versus paying the market in the bottom line, that element to it. So it's a way of utilizing your cash and investment. Your risk becomes the system doesn't work, or 2 years into it, you say, nope, we want to get rid of it, and you would have a sunk capital cost in it. We would have to go against most likely the city's general fund in terms of that issue. So that is the risk you run with that type of financing. One of the question came up was on the short-term parking in and out. The system generally gets built in with, you can go up to about a 15-minute grace period. You don't want people, they're going to stop and rip into Frank's and get a pizza and come out. You don't want them looking for a kiosk. Where do I, I'm going to be somewhere for 5 or 10 minutes, or I'm dropping somebody off, picking somebody up. There's a built-in time lag on purpose for that grace period element as well. If I can clarify in the finance more, I'll do that, but that's kind of the concept there in terms of being able to do something internally. It's not, we've actually used this in the city before. We've done it actually for some capital projects, park project in particular, where that's actually been done before. So it's not unique to Grass Valley. It's not unique to other local governments either in terms of that type of financing.
Okay. Does Jason?
Well, you guys have I've been consistently
I know you.
against this program from the very beginning. So I appreciate all of you guys coming and speaking tonight, because sometimes it's been a challenging being the only no vote, and to actually have you guys come and speak makes my job a little bit easier when there's only 3 of us up here. But regardless of the fact that, we're asking for sales tax and then wanting to charge for more parking, and the list of things with the challenges of the elderly, the toothpaste effect of spreading out, in the end, it's like you want to create an environment that people want to be part of. And we're creating a parking system that makes people have to get in their car and move to get out. And so, regardless of all of the reasons that we heard tonight, getting people to come downtown is the right thing to do, and creating a system that makes people say, no, you got to move, you got to move, you got to hurry, you got to get in and get out. It's not part of what we want in downtown Grass Valley.
Yolanda? Nothing? Yeah. Well, I will say something. When we started this in 2008. In 2008, we had RDA funds that could fund this. And we had a funding mechanism, and we had a stream of where we could dedicate funds. We don't have that any longer. And I know I'm the one that actually brought this to the council in 2008. And because of how the economy is, I'm having a little bit of a challenge taking that risk with that money. Going back to what you said, Jason, we are asking the taxpayers to pass a sales tax measure. We're asking them to spend an extra half cent when they purchase anything in the city. We are cutting back our services as much as we possibly can. And then to add this on top of it, I don't know if now is the right time to do this. And I know I've done a complete 180 on that, because, like I said, I was the champion for this system. And had we been able to do it 2 years ago, 3 years ago, or whatever, we would have had the funding mechanism in place to do it, and it wouldn't have taken away from our core services and the services that we so desperately need to keep in the city. So, yeah.
I'm very thankful for everyone that came this evening, because it did open my eyes to a lot of things. I'm in complete agreement with the mayor that when redevelopment was around, it was a very exciting opportunity for us, and I personally love the idea of the technology. And I would disagree with Council Member Foyer that I don't think that it necessarily makes people rush. I think for me, it would make me feel a little bit more comfortable that I have a place and that I'm being responsible because I'm paying for my space and what have you. I do appreciate what Mr. Poston and Mr. Enos said in regards to living in the neighborhoods that I do believe that they would be directly affected, and I appreciate what you said, Carol, but I don't think that necessarily, I think that's the perfect scenario that we, have these permits and these flex allowances and what have you, but you guys have to deal with it on day to day, and I think that would be extremely frustrating. So, it's a different day.
It is. It is a different day, because I too, I was excited about the concept of having the kiosk and the advertising possibilities and what we could do. But I see how Chauncey and Teresa's and Steve's neighborhoods are affected when we just do events and have street closures. You can't find a place to park. You have to actually park somewhere else and walk into it, and I know that they're parking in front of your homes.
For the record, we don't mind on the event.
Oh, okay. But I understand on a regular basis, it gets a little bit more challenging. I understand that. So I still think it's a great system. I think that eventually, if things change, I think that we really need to relook at this. I really do. But in all good conscience, I can't commit $400,000 that could possibly have to come back out of our general out of our general fund if this system doesn't fail. I mean, if it does fail. So I appreciate all your time and energy and the many hours and years that we've been doing this, Kane and Carol. I really do. And thank you for coming down from Reno. But again, had we been able to put this, put this together a couple of years ago, I would have had a totally different stance. But with redevelopment taken away from the city, it's caused a whole lot of different mindsets and a whole lot of different things of how we do business. So I guess
Motion to.
You've never done this before.
Yeah, I'll make a motion that we do not authorize the preparation of the final contract with Curb Systems.
Okay. Yolanda?
Yes. Or I'll second.
Yes.
Yes.
You're ahead of yourself. Christie, roll call.
Councilmember Cookson?
Yes.
Councilmember Foyer?
Yes.
Mayor Arbuckle?
Yes.
Motion carries 3-0.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay. Have Vice Mayor Miller and Councilperson Swarthout join us. Okay, next item on the agenda, Police Department Dispatch Services Agreement for Regional Dispatch, and Chief, you're back.
I am. Barely.
That was good timing on your part.
Yeah. Well, I was, for the audience, I was at sort of a proud moment as a dad. I was at family weekend for my youngest son in Roswell, New Mexico. He's at the New Mexico Military Institute. Chauncey, his sister, lives there. And so it was an exciting time. It was good. This trip was planned for a while, but way before this even came up. So besides the medical emergency on the plane, and not with me, and the lost luggage, yes, I made it here. So for the record, John Foster, your Chief of Police, and Captain Rex Marks will chime in when I don't say what I'm supposed to say. We're here tonight to talk about the consolidation of dispatch services. For me, it's with mixed emotion. It makes sense financially to do this for good governance, but because it involves people, it involves my employees, it's tough. But it's something that I truly believe that we need to move forward with. A little background, the three municipal police agencies in Nevada County and the Sheriff's Office, we've been discussing consolidating dispatch service for a number of months now. And the idea is that we would consolidate Truckee Police Dispatch Center with Grass Valley's Dispatch Center. Nevada City is currently dispatched by the Sheriff's Office. We would propose to you tonight a 5-year agreement with the service being provided by the Sheriff's Office. We came up with a cost formula allocation, which our first year would be about $370,000. We are anticipating a savings of approximately $159,000. We've agreed to an advisory committee to provide recommendations and advise on policies, practices, and procedures, and a user group to provide recommendations and advice on technology or operational issues. While we're not anticipating too many hiccups, but we realize that anything new may have some challenges, but we're hoping with the user group we'll be able to be proactive to address these issues. We're asking that the dispatchers become familiar with Grass Valley through ride-alongs and tours of our transition process. The county has been working with our staff to try to facilitate the transfer of our 4 dispatchers. I think there's still some heartburn with some of the employees on that issue that was talked about in closed door. Oh, that's right, we can't talk about what's in closed door, it's a secret. Okay, erase that comment. So, now, with that said, staff has recommended that if council approves the consolidation concept, that we utilize the savings to create 3 positions, one which would be to add an additional records clerk, and the reason for that is that currently the dispatchers, 1 part-time records clerk, and volunteers provide our point of contact for the public at the front counter or answering the phone. The dispatchers and part-time records clerk process all our traffic reports, arrest reports, citations, all the information that has to be entered into our automated system, many of the paperwork duties, as well as the counter walk-up duties. So to create a counter system that would generally, we would reduce our counter system from being over 24 hours to 5 days a week, we would recommend one additional position. In addition to that, with the savings, we're asking to refill the frozen sergeant position that was frozen in 2008. Over the past few months, police staff has been looking at our workloads, our service levels, our community needs. In addition to that, the police managers conducted a team-building workshop to evaluate our organizational structure and objectives. With the additional loss of the captain, it's imperative that we fill this vacant sergeant position for both the organizational efficiency as well as succession planning. The position would slightly be different. I've listed out some of the duties. One of the things that has been noted in our citizen attitude survey is residents want to see more emphasis in the area of crime prevention. At the same time, they want to see more emphasis in the area of drug enforcement. This position would help to assist, to facilitate those responsibilities, along with the other ones that I've outlined. And I'm not going to go into detail unless you would like me to, since it's articulated in the staff report. In addition to that, the final position that we'd like to fill with this savings is, as you know, we have 9 out of our 23 police officer positions vacant. That has been a challenge to keep our staffing at the appropriate level. We've been able to do this by using our detectives, reserves officers, regular officers on overtime. But that results in a diminished level of service, officers being fatigued, not having appropriate leave time. Whereas this position is critical to maintaining the desired quality and level of life for our city. By no means does it meet the mark, and that's why we have a ballot measure under consideration for the citizens of Grass Valley. So with that said, the first year impact is about a $4,200 transitional cost, and then we're looking about $367,000 as compared to $530,000. Increases or decreases in costs will be shared among the agencies. Net savings are proposed to be utilized to offset the implementation of the above positions. And in discussions with the sheriff, he has stated that he is also anticipating more additional savings this year than what's projected based on his past year's forecast of how his budget actually ends out at the end of the year. So that's the presentation at this point.
All right, thank you very much, John. Also, Sheriff Royal is here to also, if anybody on the council has any questions of him as well. Does anybody have any questions that they want to ask before I open it up for public comment?
My only question is on the advisory committee and the user group is, I see you put down the reasons for it, but is that necessary, or is it put in there to placate people that might be opposed to this?
The advisory committee and user group was primarily at the request of the cities. In other words, having some input into the policies and procedures and how things are done. One of my employees' main concerns that I've heard consistently is they feel that they're not going to get the same level of service internally provided. So if that's the case, then the advisory committee, if there's issues internally that need to be addressed, the advisory committee will bring those forward, and they'll be heard, and then they'll be responded to. So it's actually good to have those in there.
Okay.
John, who will sit on those committees, and who chooses who will sit on those committees?
The advisory committee will be made up of users, we would say, like
you got to the advisory, the actual advisory is the police chiefs and the sheriff.
Okay.
And then you have a users group, which would be a designee of those individuals. So our police chief could designate a captain or a
Okay,
sergeant.
so there will be representatives from each agency who will sit on those committees. That's what I was getting to, is who's going to sit on the committees, and how will those people, is it going to be citizens? Is it going to be law enforcement professionals?
No, I'll give the example that what CAL FIRE uses what CAL FIRE does is there's a point person from each agency. Generally, like for us, it'd be a sergeant. And if there's issues going on with the dispatch policies, procedures, then that person's the point person to address those issues and then get those matters resolved. See, how you have to look at it is we're the customer now. Each agency is a customer, and the sheriff, although we're working, financially together, he wants to meet our needs, and we're a little bit unique, and Nevada City is unique, and Truckee is unique. We're all different cities, and we have different expectations from our citizens. And so with the advisory group and the user group, we need to make sure that we're meeting the needs of all our different users.
So there's going to be a lot of communication between you and the sheriff and the jurisdiction.
Yes, and especially at the beginning.
Yeah.
So, now there's a process in the city where if we were to get a citizen call or complaint about anything having to do with any of our departments, but say that we were to get a call about a dispatch issue, our first line would be to call you, and you would take care of it. How will that work now? We would still call you, obviously,
Correct. We'll have a point person for Grass Valley, and that'll be the user group sergeant or Captain Marks or myself. So, if there's issues, then we will be on point to address them and then take them back to the appropriate group.
And they will be addressed in a timely manner, as if it was our department that we were dealing with?
Yes.
I think, in fairness, we have a strong working relationship already between the agencies, and the communication pathway is open. For us, if you have an issue pertaining to a dispatch matter, we have a direct pipeline, so to speak, to get that communication taken care of, just as we've done in the past. We're still your point people for those types of concerns, and we're going to work with our extended team at the Sheriff's Department to make sure it's resolved.
I think the important issue for our constituents is the level of service doesn't change, and what the calls that are made are taken care of in the same manner. I know that nothing is ever seamless, but I think the ideal situation here would be for the public not even to know that there's been a change. That, to me, would be a successful program, where they're still getting, the customer service is still getting taken care of the same way that we did in Grass Valley.
Correct. And the customers are not only the public, but our officers and other employees.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anybody else have any other questions of either John, Rex, or Sheriff? Sheriff Royal?
Thank you, Council. Sheriff Keith Royal. We started this process at your request and the other councils probably about 2 years ago. Is that good to say? We worked on it 4 years. Time flies. But at that time, we couldn't come up with a formula that really made it feasible for all agencies to participate. In recent months, we decided we're going to revisit and explore what other cost-sharing formulas are out there that would enable all agencies to generate some kind of a savings, so it was beneficial. We're looking at, in the last 3 years, all agencies have lost staff. And we've come to a crossroad from the standpoint, what can we do to establish efficiencies and cost savings so that, again, all the agencies can put additional officers on the street so they can protect their communities. And at that point, we did come up with a formula that would work for all agencies. And I think it's important to stress, we've been dealing with Nevada City and Truckee as customers for many, many years, and we've had a great working relationship. And I truly believe in working with Grass Valley, it's going to be beneficial to all agencies. It's going to be beneficial from the standpoint we're going to be able to provide a more enhanced level of public safety as well as officer safety, keeping our staff safe on the street because we'll be using the same frequencies versus listening to scanners. And maybe you pick something up, maybe you don't. So our goal is to provide the highest level of service for all agencies. Additionally, and John mentioned it, I truly believe in looking at what's the proposed budget. We don't have a history yet of what it's going to actually cost, but I truly see you're going to see additional savings.
And I could speculate, but it'd probably be $20,000 to $40,000, I think you'll see in savings. And so I'm kind of excited about what the benefit's going to be for all of us. And every agency is looking at what they're going to do with those savings to serve their community. I can tell you, our goal is, I want to maintain a jail in Truckee. This is going to allow me to hire the staff to serve the eastern region. That's the sheriff's office goal. I know that Truckee's looking at putting additional officers on the street, and Nevada City's hopefully trying to keep their budget sound so they don't have to lay anybody off. So, I mean, there's some benefits to be shared by all. I truly believe this is going to be a benefit to all of our communities, and so I would encourage you to pass this resolution. I'm not sure how this agenda item, but any other questions, I'll be available.
Hey, Keith, if, with the sheriff in Grass Valley, the same frequency and not listening to scanners, if there's an instance where Grass Valley needs assistance from the sheriff's department, something happening, that requires both agencies, is that going to mean a shorter response time?
I think you're going to have a less delay from the standpoint of communication, because currently what happens, if we don't catch it on a scanner, they make a request to our dispatch, who then has to make a radio request over the air. You cut out the middleman, so to speak.
Yeah, that's what I was getting at, exactly, okay.
Any other questions before I open up for public comment? Okay, thank you. Okay, anybody would like to speak to this issue? I'm going to open public comment, and so please come to the podium, and please limit your comments to 3 minutes for everybody to have an equal opportunity.
Good evening again, Steve Enos, resident of Grass Valley. One more item after this one. I started my law enforcement career as a deputy sheriff in Trinity County, and I had a choice of where I started, in the street or in the jail and dispatch. And being a rural county, in Trinity County, you were the jailer and a dispatcher. You had a matron female and a male on it each time. And I chose that for a reason, because being a dispatcher and going ahead and working in the jail is probably the most valuable place in education you get if you're going to go ahead and be a law enforcement officer out on the street eventually, and you should start in dispatch in the jail to understand a lot of things. I love our dispatchers. I talk to them all the time. And one of the things that our dispatchers do is they know stuff. They know the little codes about the here and the there and the thing under the stuff, and they know where Jackie's Crack House is. And a lot of times don't have addresses and such, but it's, okay, hey, Jackie's Crack House, there, oh, yep, we got it, talk to the officers, boom, they're right there. Because all got the shorthand down, and everybody's got the history of all of this. I see tons of benefits financially and the potential to go ahead and put these things together, and I'm sure that Sheriff's Department will do a great job and all that other stuff, but we will be losing some things by going ahead and doing this. Definitely. Our dispatchers are a bunch of hard-working people, and the job that they do is absolutely incredible. And as the chief talked a little bit about, it's not answering the phones and talking on the radio. That's a percentage of it. And when you look at the police blotter each day for the number of calls of service, you see the numbers like 70, 80, 90, 100 calls for service in a 24-hour period that they handle. Pretty amazing. We're gonna lose some stuff if we go ahead and if you decide to go ahead and do this. And these are just some things to go ahead and consider. What it will we lose and what we gain. But if you decide to go on this, and basically the only reason is to save money, and then have this saved money to use for something else, which is going to go ahead and fill a need and impact in our county, or our city. The chief went ahead and talked a little bit about this, about where we would use that money. Here's where I want you to use the money. You have the ability to go ahead and designate where that money goes in the savings. Here tonight you can say, Chief, we want you to use some of the savings to go ahead and refill the designated drug enforcement officer that we cut. Drugs are our number one issue. It's the number one driver of our crime. Our polls say and surveys say it's number one. And say the very first thing we're going to do with that saved money is we're going to go ahead and get ourselves a drug enforcement officer that does drug enforcement. And number two, we're going to go ahead and we're going to re-engage in the county drug task force. If you really want to do something that's going to impact our town in a positive way, that's it. So if you want to know how to use the saved money, send that message now of what you're going to use it for. Get us a drug enforcement officer and get us back in the drug task force with that money. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ed Thomas, Morgan Ranch Drive. I can appreciate what Mr. Eno said, but I don't think that the council's position to decide whether it should be a traffic officer, a drug officer, and so forth. That's the chief of police job, and I think he's done a great job with our department, and that decision should be left in his hands, in my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anybody else like to speak to this issue? Okay, seeing none, I'll close public comment, bring it back to council for further discussion and or motion.
Madam Mayor, if I can make one comment prior to a motion,
Absolutely.
if I may. As you know, the agreement is going forward. It's going to be approved by us potentially this evening. Nevada City is hearing it tomorrow night. Truckee, I think, is this week also, and then ultimately to the County Board of Supervisors on October 9th. Given the fact that any of those agencies may actually want to modify the agreement, ultimately we won't all have the same agreement. If you do approve it, we'd like to have the caveat that we have the ability to make the minor adjustments as it may be needed based on other agencies, so we don't have to bring it back unless it's something substantial. And also, I have asked the Attorney's Office to do one more review through the process, so they may have some changes as well that we would have to ask the other agencies to consider as well. So just a heads up that it's in this process. We can adopt it, but there's 3 other agencies that are adopting it also, so there may be some other, I don't think anything substantial would come out of that, but there may be some other tweaks that we need to incorporate. So if we can have that latitude if it does go forward.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have?
I'd just like to thank the chief. I know this has not been an easy process for you at all. I mean, we're talking about your family. You're talking about the things that are close to you. And you coming and recommending something like this is never an easy task. So I truly appreciate that. But I think it boils down to just being good stewards of taxpayers' dollars. And I think this is an opportunity that it's not just good stewards of Grass Valley's tax dollars, it's also good stewards of the county's residents as well as Nevada City's, as well as Truckee. So it kind of goes beyond our borders and affects our community at large versus just, here in Grass Valley. And it's a good thing to kind of focus on more regional opportunities that exist for everybody. And we appreciate the dispatchers, and we know this is not an easy transition for you or our officers. We know it's rough, but at certain times call for certain decisions, and if we're going to go out and ask for tax dollars to help fund other things, we would need to make sure that we're doing all the right things for our to represent that we're doing the right things with our tax dollars.
Yeah, the relationships that are built in the PD and the job that they do. I mean, those are hard things to deal with, and I know that it's a tight organization, but at the same time, we're looking to do the same thing with fire services. But it's coordination of services that we're really looking at, and if we can coordinate better with the sheriff, if we can bring back a product that still meets our needs and our level of service, and at the same time put more bodies on the street for public safety, I think it's a good thing. And I think you bringing it forward, Chief, and making us understand that even though that relationship is going to suffer a little bit, but still for citizens of Grass Valley, they're going to receive continued great service from our PD and the dispatch through the Sheriff's Department, and we're able to do more with that money. It's a prudent thing to do.
So, are you done? I'm sorry. Vice Mayor. Okay. I had an incident on Sunday morning, and it's kind of neat because they're both here. And my neighborhood is very challenged, and I am a frequent user of our police department and our dispatch services. So I called the non-emergency number, and Mary answered, and I was able to say, "Hey, Mary, it's Yolanda Cookson having a problem in my area." And then Colin came over a little bit later, and they were able to discuss with my neighbors and I, what's going on. They totally know what's going on in my neighborhood. Put my neighbors at ease, and I think that is such a valuable service that it's really hard for me. I get the business side of things, and, I'm not necessarily the best business person, and I understand that we do have to be fiscally prudent, and it's our responsibility as electeds, but it's a really hard thing, and I appreciate what you said, Chief, that it is a family, because I have grown to really care about, not only our police department, our fire department, the staff at City Hall, Public Works. We are a really great family, and it's really hard to lose one of your family members. I think it's also very important that in the future, when these types of collaborative efforts happen, that we do it as respectfully as we possibly can. And I would urge, future councils to do that, and whether it's working with the county, whether it's working with Consolidated, let's make sure that these people that we're affecting, that we remember that they're people, and that they have families, and that they're our neighbors, and that they're our community. And that's all I have to say.
Hey, don't you have Colin's cell phone number?
No, but we can do that afterwards.